Hello, and welcome to today's conversation, the new benefits package, presented by PwC. I'm Bennett Richardson, General Manager of Protocol. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our partners at PwC for making today's event possible. At Protocol, we aim to arm you as decision makers in technology, business, and policy with actionable news and analysis to help you do your job. Huge open-air cafeterias aren't coming back anytime soon, and neither are a lot of the employees who used to eat in them. Getting your dry cleaning done at the office is no longer the enticing perk that it once was. So, what are the benefits and the perks of the new workplace? Rather than spending a fortune on snacks for the mini kitchen, where should you be investing to keep your team happy and keep hiring the best? Our expert panel will discuss what it takes. I hope you will join the conversation by tweeting your questions with the hashtag #ProtocolLive. And if you're not already subscribed, don't forget to sign up for Protocol Workplace and our other great newsletters at protocol.com/newsletters. To kick things off, I'm excited to welcome Joe Atkinson, Vice Chair and U.S. Chief Product and Technology Officer at PwC. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Bennett. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. So tell us, Joe, why is this topic, the new benefits package, so important to PwC?
Well, Bennett, you hit so many of the key topics in your intro. The world's changing. We all know the world's changing. And for a firm like PwC, we rely so heavily on attracting and retaining really phenomenal talent. It's what our clients expect from us. And at the same time, all of our clients are seeing the same issues. They're watching the expectation of employees change. They're watching the expectation of what really represents compensation change. And as a result, we're all asking questions of what does it mean to really provide benefits that reflect the value that our employees bring to the organization. So important topic in industry, important topic for PwC, and I think just an important topic we're all going to be talking about for some time.
Certainly. And wanted to start off, this changing employee experience, as well as just the changing dynamics of the workforce in general, is really important context for today's conversation. Even before the pandemic, some of your research from PwC showed that 1 in 3 jobs is likely to be disrupted or even disappear in the next decade because of technological change. And to meet that, I know you all have announced a pretty ambitious $3 billion investment over 4 years in digital training and technology, both with clients, but also with the communities that you serve. Talk to us about that investment and how that's going.
Yeah, one of the things that we saw even before the pandemic, and of course now the pandemic shows it to be absolutely true, is that employees expect a very different benefit from employers with respect to their own training, development, and growth. And in the environment that we're all operating in, there's lots of ways you can provide employees opportunities to grow. But one that was in high demand were digital skills. How do I create the right experiences in the technologies we deploy? How do I even understand the technologies that are changing around me at the pace that they're changing? And so employees of every walk and stripe, if you will, were coming to us and saying, we need better technology skills in order to serve our clients, work together, innovate around the work. And there was a real fear that in the absence of those kinds of skills, that employees weren't going to be relevant. They weren't going to be relevant to us, and they certainly weren't going to be relevant to our clients. So this fear of relevance and being able to have an impact over the course of your career drove us to step back and look and say, what do we really owe our employees in terms of skills and capabilities and opportunities to grow? So we launched what we called our Your Tomorrow program inside the firm. And as you saw, this new world, new skills spread across the world. And we invested over $3 billion, not only in our own people, but in providing opportunities for our clients, stakeholders, communities, underserved and underrepresented individuals to take advantage of training opportunities so they could create the kind of skills capability that would make them more relevant. We started thinking that you had to target that. We started thinking that it was about people that needed those skills. And one of the things that we learned along the way is where 10 years ago, we might have all been talking about jobs that needed tech and jobs that didn't. The reality is all jobs now need tech. All jobs are tech jobs. And so providing that capability to employees became a really important way for us to not only build their value, but keep them around, keep them challenged, and help them grow.
That's fascinating. I think two key insights there for sure. I mean, all jobs being tech jobs, and that investment in digital skills is so important. And then I thought your point about kind of what you all owe your employees is such an interesting context to think about as well, as we're so often, more traditionally, you hear the other way around. A lot of executives tuning in today, both in the more HR and people functions, as well as in more tech-centric roles, what do executives need to be thinking about as they work to build out the workforce of tomorrow in their workplaces?
But those executives in the panel that we're all going to hear from in a few minutes, I think we all know the truth. And the truth is there's no playbook for what we're experiencing right now. Nobody's ever emerged from a global pandemic. Nobody's ever dealt with the pace of technology change that we're looking at right now. And there's all kinds of great studies and reports out there. I have a consultant in the HR world that Grace Kalia, who called it the Great Reflection. It's really a great way to think about it. We've been talking about the great attrition and the great resignation, but the reality is it was this opportunity that so many people had to evaluate and reflect and think about what's important to them personally, what's important to their career, what's important to providing for their family, their friends, their loved ones, the people they care about. And that reflection is creating very different dynamics in the expectations of employees from employers. And so my first bit of advice is if you're not paying attention to that, which I think most executives are, but let's suppose that there's some out there that haven't noticed that. If you're not paying attention to that, you have to start paying attention to it. The second bit of advice is because there's no playbook, the only people that can really inform you here are your employees. They're the ones that have to help you understand how their own perspectives are changing as a result of all of these factors that are converging on us. And then the last piece I would say is it is a good time to get creative. I loved the entry into this session because we talked about the things that we thought were creative in the past of dry cleaning at the office and great cafeteria food. Those were important at the moment. Well, now the creativity is different, and that creativity is much more about individuals getting boundaries that they can protect, individuals having an understanding of what is really flexible work and what is not really flexible work, and individuals getting supported in the way that they work so that all of these factors that we're all dealing with can actually get managed in a way that makes sense to the employee. So in a lot of ways, it is a massive shift in reflection in terms of the way people are thinking about the employer-employee relationship, which of course then tees you up to what are the new benefits packages in that environment.
Yeah, the point about getting creative in this new normal is so important, and would love to close with that, kind of putting the focus back on you and PwC. What are you all seeing and implementing as the new benefits package, and what are you doing to kind of make that possible for both your clients and your employees?
Well, as you would expect, Ben, we're in the client service business, right? So part of my experience as a 28-year veteran of the firm is that the client expectations drive everything. Well, the reality is even our clients are struggling with the balance of where work gets done and how work gets done, and how do we create the boundaries around that experience for our people. So this idea of boundaries, protected time, providing people flex, that's really a very big focus of the way that we're thinking about benefits. And for people in the frontline client service business like our teams, that's a huge benefit because prior to that, the discussion was always about, well, the client calls, you've got to respond. And of course we will respond. But the good news is we have the capacity so the teams can step in and support each other. So you don't have to sacrifice the client response just so that somebody is working all the time to try to deliver it. So I think flexibility is a big piece. The second is recognizing the way people live and work today and the challenges that they have. Caregiving support, the ability for people to have emergency caregiving support if they've got loved ones they're caring for, whether they're children or friends and family or parents, and understanding that people are dealing with all kinds of shifts in demographics that are creating different pressures at home. And of course, we're all in front of the screen at home, which means the flexibility to provide support at home or wherever we're working, that flexibility becomes even more important. So I think those themes of creativity are really important. And then, of course, there's a broad theme around health and wellness. How do we make sure that wellness is not just physical fitness, which most of us hopefully have been focused on, but it's mental fitness as well and mental wellness. What are we doing to help our employees balance all of the stresses that they're under? And if we as employers can get better and better at that, the great news is we're not only going to help our employees, we're going to actually have an impact societally, given the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that we all employ.
No, that's so important. And I think that framework of creativity, support, and flexibility against that backdrop of health and wellness is so important and a great way to kick things off here. Thank you, Joe, and thanks again to PwC for your partnership on this.
It's our pleasure, Bennett. Thanks, and looking forward to hearing the comments from the committee or from the panel. So thank you.
Yeah, no, us as well. Now on to our panel. I'm excited to bring up our moderator, Protocol Workplace reporter Anna Kramer, to get the conversation started. Anna, over to you.
Thanks so much, Bennett. I really appreciate it. So we are here to talk about how benefits have changed over the last couple of years. and what we invest in and what we don't invest in. And more importantly, now how the idea of benefits really encompasses more than health plans and 401k matches. Because we're living in a moment where it seems like absolutely everyone is talking about worker power and workers demanding things from their employers that they wouldn't usually ask for before. And we live in a point in time where all of these questions are constantly changing and dynamic. And a lot of people are really not sure what workers are looking for and what it is that we should be offering to them. And so we're really going to dive into all of those important questions here and talk about what's working and what's not, what companies need to be thinking about in terms of their benefit packages. And that's both formally in their contracts and more broadly in the way a company culture is built. So what we're going to start off doing is having each of our three panelists quickly introduce themselves and also answer the question for themselves as to why this is an important moment to be having this conversation. Our three panelists are Zoe Harte, the Chief People Officer at Upwork, Dr. Evelyn Carter, the Managing Director of Paradigm IQ, and Dan Turner, the Chief Recruiting Officer at Kelly Science, Engineering, Technology, and Telecom. And so I'm going to start by positing that quick question and intro first to Zoe, if she'd like to get us going.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. As you said, my name is Zoe Harte. I'm the Chief People Officer at Upwork. We are the world's work marketplace that connects businesses with independent talent. And I think because of the seismic shift we've all been through in the last 20 months or so, this time has never been more critical for us to show up for our employees and the people we want to be our employees when there's so much reshuffling happening. And so it's a critical moment for us to reflect as business drivers around what we can do and how we can show up for the people with whom we work.
And Evelyn, if you want to go next.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Evelyn Carter. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I work for Paradigm. We're a strategy firm that focuses on helping organizations become more diverse, equitable, and inclusive so that they can change the world. And the reason I think it's so important to have this conversation now is that what I'm learning from the clients that I work with is that people want to be talking about racial justice at work. They want to be talking about how to be more inclusive. Yesterday, we celebrated World Pronouns Day. People want to know, how do I talk about this stuff at work? That doesn't mean they inherently know how. And so part of the new benefits package can be, how do we empower employees and employers to have these kinds of conversations that can drive an inclusive, equitable, and just world that we all want to live in?
And Dan.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks to Protocol for their leadership in this space. This is a really important topic, and the sponsor, PwC. My name is Dan Turner. I'm the Chief Recruiting Officer at Kelly Services. Kelly is a leading global provider of talent, staffing, and solutions globally. I think for me, I've got 21 years of experience in the IT staffing space, and I've spent about 20 of those years developing recruiting strategies to enable companies to attract top talent. I think in the last year, I've spent the majority of my time, my customer facing time, answering the question, Dan, what's going on and what's going to change? And so I think it's really important to discuss the topic. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to learn from my fellow panelists. I think it's going to be a great session today.
Awesome. And so I'm going to start us off with a question for Zoe that is a two-part question, which is, I'm really curious if you had to identify one main thing that workers are looking for. And the reason I say this is a two-part question is I'm curious both A, for the folks inside of Upwork specifically, and B, for the platform that Upwork serves. And so this could be two different answers here. What is it that is the one main thing that workers are looking for that they were not looking for 2 years ago, and that they probably, you think, will remain permanent, that they'll want 2 years from now?
I think I'm going to maybe not answer exactly, but there are two things I think that are critical. So maybe not just one, which is flexibility and being seen for who they are. And those things are interrelated. We need flexibility. We learned what happens if you don't have to commute an hour each way, and what it means to be able to step away to put in a load of laundry or look after a loved one for half an hour. That remains something that I think people are saying hard no to going back to the office in many cases, and they want more flexibility. They understand that it has created a different value proposition for them in having agency about not just their careers, but their lives. And that sort of leads into the second part of that, which is they want to be seen for who they are. We all do better work when somebody like cares about us as a person, shows up for who we are, and really embraces what's unique and diverse and different about us. And so those two things to me really go together, because it's about the wholeness of the relationship between the worker and the company for whom they're working, and really being more of a partnership than ever before.
And so you raise a really interesting point here, which is you're saying that workers want to be seen for who they are. And so I'm really curious how you go about defining that as something that you can prove to a candidate and to the workers in your workplace that that's like a benefit or a cultural value you offer. And so I want to ask Evelyn this question first, I think, because I'm sure that you have some valuable insights here. And then Zoe and Dan, if there's anything you want to add there as well. I am really curious how you go about defining this and sort of proving that that's a benefit you're offering.
So I think that's a really great question. And part of what makes it challenging is what you're really talking about is how do you prove that everyone has a sense of belonging, the feeling that they can be their authentic self and be accepted for who they are, right? I think something when I think about belonging for me, I'm 5'2", but I'm a very loud person. I have a very boisterous laugh. So for me, feeling like I belong means that I can laugh in the workplace with the fullness of who I am, and people will enjoy that. Or, I can be a little quirky and they'll like that too. And that is hard to prove. But some of the things that people are looking for are there a variety of people who laugh in different ways or who present in different ways? And are those folks at different levels of the organization? Are they visible, right, in ways that show that they are celebrated? So those are some of the signals that people are looking for to say, okay, I see that there's a sense of belonging here. I think another thing that people look for is a sense of psychological safety and voice, knowing that their perspectives will be listened to. And even if their ideas aren't adopted, that they're going to be considered. And so those are some of the things that when we think about how to prove this to folks, we say, well, how are you doing in terms of your pulse surveys, in terms of your inclusion surveys that you're running? Do you have the data to show this, that there are not differences between groups? And also when you talk to people, how do they feel? Do they show that sense of belonging and psychological safety? And those are some of the ways in which you can get a sense of whether you're creating that culture that you're striving toward that Zoe was talking about, where people feel seen.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, when you're talking to candidates, how do you sort of give these examples or illustrate to candidates that this is something that's offered?
Yeah, it's really changed quite a bit. When I was a recruiter and I worked a desk, IT talent asked me, typically the same three questions. What's the pay rate or the salary? What's my commute? And is there a competitive benefits package? Now we're getting detailed questions about what type of work am I going to be doing? What's the purpose of the work? How is this work going to help the world? And, we've really blurred the lines between work and personal life. We've all heard the guidance. You have to work to live, don't live to work. Now work is in our homes. I'm a single dad. I have 3 children. My children don't ask me, Dad, how was your day? They said, Dad, how many people did your team put to work today? They know exactly what I do. They know who my direct reports are. They, put their heads in on camera and say hi to Mr. Bob and Mr. John. We've blurred the lines between work and life. And now people want to do work that's really fulfilling for them. In all different industries. And so those are the questions that we're getting now. People want to have an impact in the world. The last year has really caused a pause and a moment of reflection. And I think people are looking at what type of work am I doing? What type of work do I want to do? How do I want to live my life? And how do I want work and life to come together?
Mm-hmm. And I'll ask this to you first, Zoe. I am curious how you sort of go about measuring or figuring out what it is that the workers you do have want in terms of benefits. Sort of how do you think about how you measure that and how you can assess that in a way that feels accurate?
Yeah, I mean, the first and primary expectation we have is that we talk to our team members about what's going on, and we have a sense of who they are and where they are in their life's journey. We know that having so many different generations in the workforce means people are not going to need the same thing over the tenure of their career with us. We have a lot of people in the sandwich generation, like I live with my mother-in-law and my young children, as well as my husband. And we have a lot of people who are just starting out, getting married, having kids. And we really need to show up and understand where people are, what makes most sense. So we do a couple of things. One is the HR team is constantly in conversation with our colleagues. We also have really created an open dialogue where people are very clear and very open about sharing what would make things easier or better for them. We also pilot a lot of programs. We'll try something. We'll say, hey, in working with our Upwork belonging communities, hey, would this benefit be helpful for you? Let's pilot it with 10 people and see what the feedback is. So it's not that everything has to be these ginormous rollouts all the time. And then we also obviously offer, choices to our team members. Is this benefit more important to you than this benefit? Okay, prioritize, leaning into that. And then for people who don't use our benefits in terms of like the standard healthcare benefits, because maybe they're on a partners, we, pay them a subsidy to do something else with the money that we would otherwise spend as a company on the portion that we pay for their health benefits too.
Can you give an example of something that you've piloted and sort of how that process worked and what you concluded from it?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what a pilot we're in the middle of right now, which is with an organization called Strong Suit. And they are a company that is sort of like a personal concierge who takes a lot of like that mental load that people carry off of them. So one of the things, as the panelists have said, is because of the blur of home and work, it is hard to step away. And, we definitely see that leading to burnout around when I feel like because my computer's here, because my desk is set up right by my bedroom, I should always be doing a little bit more work. And so some of the things that I might spend more home time on are sort of dropping by the wayside. And so what we have done is partnered with this team. They have an organization that, does meetings, it does intake, and they take off some of the home things that you're thinking about, or like, when do I need to order the turkey for Thanksgiving, right? Or am I going to do holiday cards this year? And some of those things that are not necessarily the most important parts of your life, but you want to do them because you want to show up fully for your community and the people you love. And so we're testing that right now with a super small group of our team members to see whether that does genuinely help them feel a little less stressed in juggling the balance.
Okay. And Evelyn, I wanted to ask you sort of the same question here, because I'm curious your insights. What do you see as the most useful ways to measure what it is that workers really want from their employers?
I mean, I love everything that Zoe said about asking, right? I think something that's so interesting is that as a leader, we often have a lot of context about where the organization is going and all the different moving parts. And yet that doesn't mean that we're inherently right about what people need or want. And so I think it's really important to say, hey, I have a proposal or an idea of what might be good. Is this something you would like? And so exactly what Zoe is talking about, I love that idea of just asking people questions. What I think is also important is as you are doing those pilots or as you're having the, kind of trying those things out, making sure that you're continually checking in with folks, right? Be like, is this solving the need that you have, right? Is this working well? How might you want to adjust it? And so it's really that ongoing conversation that I think really makes it essential. And I just can't say enough how much I love what you're talking about piloting, Zoe. And I feel like I would like that kind of service for myself.
I was going to say, that sounds really ideal as a benefit.
We just agreed to host Thanksgiving yesterday. And so I'm like, oh gosh, I have to get a turkey. Yeah.
And so to move to you, Dan, I am curious from sort of the job applicant perspective, if there are any hard lines that you see workers drawing around ideas of work from home and choosing where they live, those kinds of questions, are you seeing emerging trends here where workers are like, I just will not take this job if I don't have X version of flexibility?
Yes, we're seeing the lines blur less and less as the weeks go on. So I look at our IT job portfolio at Kelly Services. We work with the majority of Fortune 250 organizations. And right now, about 70% of the positions that we are working on are remote positions in the IT space. So, you look at pre-pandemic and how that percent looked, it was significantly different. Again, I go back to when I worked a desk, one of the first questions I asked was, what are you looking for pay? What are you looking for? The very first question we ask now is, are you only looking for a remote position? And I think another question that's starting to surface, especially with some of the recent announcements from the federal government, are vaccine status. I think that that's going to become more prevalent over the next couple of months, especially as organizations make decisions around what their vaccine requirements are going to be for people to come back into offices. So those two things, I think, are becoming much more hard and fast, even more so than they were 4 or 5 months ago.
And so since that's becoming much more of a thing for the workers who are applying for jobs, I'm wondering what you say or would say theoretically to managers who really deeply believe in office work, right? Because this is a tension that we're seeing quite a lot. And I think there are some places that really wish they could go back to the way that things were or kind of want to double down on those policies. And it seems less and less likely as sort of a general standard. And so I'm wondering how you theoretically sort of think through that with managers who are sort of stuck in a different way of thinking.
Yeah, I go back to 2016 and I'll look in the mirror and I'll say that in 2016, Kelly Services made the decision to move their recruiting remote. I had always been in an office environment and I said, that's going to impact my ability to lead recruiting. That's going to impact my ability to lead a large organization and be an effective leader. I want to walk up to someone's desk on a Monday and ask them how their weekend was. And, I'm not going to be able to do that. And it was a challenging transformation for me. And now I'm the person that gets called when our clients are struggling with that, because I don't think I've ever been able to lead more effectively. And I had to really change my leadership style. But when you care about your people and you establish trust with your folks, that resonates, whether it's done in an office or whether it's done virtually. So I think that there are organizations that want to move a percent of their organization into a hybrid model. Our Kelly OCG platform distributes a white paper called the Workforce Agility Report. It was published in July 2021. I highly recommend it for anyone that hasn't seen it. And about 56% of, we surveyed 1,000 executives globally, and about 56% of those are saying that they're going to move to a hybrid model. How hybrid is defined is unknown. But when you look at I read an article the other day that surveyed 100 CEOs, 85% of them are going to significantly reduce real estate expenditure in the United States over the next year, and 0% plan on expanding their real estate footprint over the next year. So, things are changing pretty quickly.
And so I think this is a good question for Zoe. I am curious, when we talk about the fact that at the end of the day, like companies are spending less on real estate, for example, that makes offices a less attractive benefit. And that's definitely something that workers used to think about quite a lot. And I'm wondering how you sort of compensate for the fact that people are working from home in terms of what people actually need to be productive and happy in their physical homes instead of in an office. How do you move that investment from real estate into something else that is sort of equivalent?
Yeah, I mean, what we have done at Upwork is we've given everybody $1,000 stipend to help make their home workspace more what they need, right? Again, one size fits one. I'm not going to tell you need to buy this desk and this monitor. We know some people already have like 3 giant monitors and they're good. And they want to use this for more plants. And so we give them that. I mean, I went plant crazy over COVID. But But I think a lot of people are looking for ways to make this feel more natural and more like there's a separate space that they could have for their work. And so we have literally given people the financial support to do that. And we've also done other things, which is to say, if you feel like you really need to go and work in a separate space, like we have an allocation for that so people can go and work in, a WeWork or whatever. We also, are very clear that for us, while we have shuttered some of our offices, we know that part of why people miss that is because they missed, to Dan's point, that serendipitous moment of running into Evelyn at the coffee machine. And so how do we build those things back together? And we've also been really explicit with our team that there are going to be some times when we do gather. So this isn't, you're never going to see those people. You're never going to get to hug your best friend from finance again. This is that you are going to see these people in intentional moments of collaboration, community, and innovation. And the rest of the time we're going to put into practice, clear policies and approaches for how we do that work remotely, but we'll still get together. And I think that has assuaged some of the fear that people had about going fully remote.
Okay. And I think this is also a question for you, but Evelyn and Dan, feel free to chime in as well. I want to talk specifically a little bit about parental leave and childcare benefits.
Yeah.
Because I think that the conversation around exactly what's expected there and what is necessary has really changed if people are working from home instead of in the office. And I'm wondering how you've rethought those benefits and sort of where you think the expectations have moved.
Yeah, I think that the expectations really have become much, much broader. And that is partially informed by the fact that we are having conversations that we didn't have 2 years ago. To Evelyn's point in her introduction, right? It's an expectation that we talk about racial justice at our workplace. It's also an expectation that we talk about mental health. And so that means putting in more support systems. We know that the parenting journey has a lot of ups and downs for people. And so we have really been explicit about offering fertility benefits, adoption benefits for, people who are in same-sex relationships and all that, and being very explicit about equitable approaches to that. We also have a very clear pregnancy loss leave for either partner. And we talk about that a lot, and bereavement leave and other places of this, so that when we're talking about our benefits, we're really thinking holistically. I think the best example I can share of this is a sad example, but it's our bereavement leave. And, I've worked at many companies where bereavement leave is your immediate family. Well, at Upwork, we say, I don't know who your family is. You tell me. Is this person a family member to you? They don't need to be a blood relative. They may be your church leader. They may be the aunt you've always lived with. Who am I to say whether this person matters to you? And so we write our policies to be as inclusive and as driven by the employee as possible. Because of exactly that. We want to show up for them and the wholeness of their lives.
And Dan, have you seen asks around these kinds of benefits change as well?
Yeah, the talent, our talent are looking for personalization with benefit. I mean, again, look at me. I'm a single parent. I have 3 children. My best friend is married. He has 6 children. And I have a brother that's a recent college grad that's unmarried. We all have very different benefit needs. And so what our talent are looking for, really in the same light of, they want their work to be personalized. They want to be able to engage in work in a manner that suits them, is they want choices with their benefits. And, not just with healthcare, but PTO is important. As Zoe mentioned, childcare is important. The benefits that contribute to retirement are important. And our talent are really looking for options and choices. So very rarely will we choose to engage talent in a certain client need without sharing what that company's complete benefits package looks like. Our talent are looking for choices, and our companies need to understand that in order to attract top talent, they need to offer choices.
And I think that's a perfect segue into what I think is probably one of the bigger and more important questions here, which is how we think about the fact that different people and different groups of people really need and are seeking different benefits. right? There's a diversity of need and desire here for various folks. The benefits that's most useful for a single mother is very different from that of somebody who's older and married and doesn't have children. And so I think I'll go to Evelyn here. How do you think through the fact that different groups and different people really need different benefits? And how is it possible to sort of address that wide range and make sure that you're listening to every single person in their experience, not just sort of whatever the average or majority might come out to be?
Yeah, so the thing that I really recommend is working with the people managers to help equip them with the skills to listen to what their team needs and to create that sense of belonging and psychological safety for the folks who are on their teams. As I'm listening to Zoe and Dan talk, I'm just thinking about this from the perspective of someone who is a new manager, right? And is thinking, oh my gosh, I need to be inclusive of the person who's got the 6 kids and the single father and also the person who's bereaving, and it can be overwhelming. And so what I like to do is to think about how are we equipping leaders with the skills that they need to lead in this time? Because if we can get those managers and those directors on board with thinking about how they can be instrumental in creating that environment of belonging for their teams, then all of the diversity of the needs and the benefits and whatnot is going to come through, right? And so what I often invite people to do when I'm working with these either new managers or people who are just managing in this new time is to ask them to think about, what is the best environment you've ever worked in? And I actually, to the point of where we started this panel, often nudge them to think, like, go beyond the perks and the, free sodas and whatnot, but how did it feel? And what they often talk about are saying, well, one, I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had a voice. I felt like I was invited to take risks and to grow. And I felt like my work was being evaluated fairly. And so these are actually the pillars of what inclusive leadership looks like right now, right? And if you can equip managers and leaders with those skills, then you can help the people who they are working with, their direct reports, no matter what their needs are, feel like they are going to be able to do their best work. So to me, it really comes down to how are we enabling the leaders who are working with the diverse workforce that we have to ensure that everyone feels like they're being brought along and that they're getting what they need from the organization.
Go
ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, if I can add to that. I thought Evelyn made a great point. I referenced earlier that 59% of leaders are going to move more toward a hybrid model. What was also interesting to Evelyn's point is a third of those leaders said that they didn't feel like their leadership teams were equipped to manage a remote workforce or a workforce that's in a hybrid environment, and that they needed training, they needed development, again, similar to what I went through in my personal experience in transitioning from leading in an office to leading in a remote environment.
Yeah, I mean, to continue to build on that, it's really difficult. I remember a lot of leaders at the beginning of the pandemic saying to me, Evelyn, I feel inauthentic when I'm engaging with my team, because whereas I used to, as Dan was saying, drop by somebody's desk and just knock on their door. How are you? How was your weekend? You don't run into them when you're in the kitchen or grabbing that coffee anymore. And so what I was telling them is, you have to be more intentional about creating those moments. And it feels weird to say, can I schedule a 15-minute chat with you just to say hi? And so part of what we've had to do is help equip leaders with those skills to figure out, what does it look like for you to lead in this new world, and to normalize that it's okay to not know, and that we're here to help you. And so I really feel passionate about that, and I love what you said, Dan.
Zoe, I am curious. I was going to ask, how do you guys think about training leaders to be able to handle this environment more? And I know it seems almost like we're moving way beyond this conversation of the benefits package, but I actually think this is such a clear illustration of the fact that the benefits package is this very ambiguous thing now. And so I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about, I know leadership training doesn't seem necessarily like a benefit, but it really is. And so I'm curious how you guys think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I want to amplify everything Dan and Evelyn have been saying. I think if you back in the day when I was starting in HR, I remember people saying people don't leave companies, they leave managers, right? And so to Evelyn's point, if you're not creating psychological safety or it feels disingenuous, your team don't want to do their best work for you, and they may right now especially be taking additional calls to go and work someplace else. So that really, really matters. At Upwork, we've done a few things. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were really open about, okay, we're a remote work company, we're remote first, we've always been a hybrid blended team, but now everybody is in that situation. And for a lot of us, there was a level of vulnerability and authenticity we needed to show about how we were pulling it together just like everybody else. And I think especially at the top level, it's critical to be able to share whatever it is that's happening that's beyond just this perfect Zoom screen you've got just focused here, so you don't see the laundry here or the kid crying here or whatever the thing is that's happening. And so we really tried to do that and model that and be open about that. I think the other thing is that we've tried to put really clear policies and expectations in place, because one of the things that can get lost in this new environment is an understanding of what is it what do you need from me as your team member to show that I'm really doing the work that you want, right? And so we've always been results first and not a FaceTime company, but being explicit about that again. And then we have launched an internal playbook that will be external at some point about remote work practices and how to include people on Zoom and when to be cameras on and cameras off, and that it's okay to do that and to do some calls via telephone, imagine that, versus Zoom, because we are kind of all a little bit over looking at ourselves on camera all day. And so how to be clear about those things. And then lastly, the other thing we did is we created an entirely new job at Upwork that's an employee enablement role. And the awesome woman who does that work for us is thinking all day, every day about how can I make this a more productive, inclusive, inspiring way to work, and documenting and engaging in that. And so those things have been very, very important. And when we pair that with clarity around asynchronous work versus synchronous work time on our calendars and explicit communication about that, it's worked pretty well for us.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
If I can add one thing, I think when this happened last year and we all started working remotely, we're on the phone with our boss and the doorbell rings, or the dog barks, or the sick child sneezes and said, Daddy, can I have some water? I think we've all moved through those basic boundaries of, people are going to walk by in the background. It's okay to wear a dress shirt and a sport coat and sweatpants and flip-flops because, you're only going to be seen from the waist up. We've all established those preliminary boundaries. I think the organizations that are really honing in on engagement and employee satisfaction are doing really innovative things. And there's great articles, there's great books out there about innovative ways to lead in a remote environment. And anyone that's challenged with leading in a remote environment, there's great literature out there to look at. But I think, just be creative and be fun and keep your employees in mind. And we do crazy things at Kelly. We have Crazy Hat Day, and we do all kind of fun things. I'm sure everyone is doing those unique things. We just need to continue to push the boundaries. People need to be comfortable in their work environment.
You mentioned great literature. Do you have a favorite book or article that you read and found especially useful?
I read when I transitioned to remote work. I think I read every book that was written on the subject. Because it really was an intimidating shift for me. I'm in charge of hundreds of recruiters, and I know that there's some books and literature that have come out recently. We have guest speakers that come and talk to us about leading in a remote environment. Every time I talk to someone about leading in a remote environment, I hear a different twist on how they're doing it. I think so much of it just depends on the leader's style. But I don't have anything off the top of my head that I can recommend, but I know there's a lot out there.
And so this question I think is also for you, or at least to start. I am curious sort of what you're seeing in terms of the sort of controversy over location-based salaries, and whether sort of in a remote work world, if where you live should play a role in determining how much you make, or affect how much you make? Is this something that you see candidates asking you about? Is there like a preference where people are leaning to the idea that they want a consistent salary everywhere, or they would rather it be location based? What are you seeing and hearing here?
I will take it a step further, and I will say that the migration to lower cost of living areas it is real. Obviously, we've all seen the statistics there. But what that's doing is it's giving people the financial freedom to choose the type of work they want to do. And that's very important. I will say that organizations now, if 70% of our postings are remote, organizations are going to look at, do I want to hire someone that lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or do I want to hire someone that lives in San Francisco? And I think that's something that we're going to have to get after, and we're going to have to look at. I will tell you that talent has a desire to maintain the salary or pay rate that they did have in that higher cost of living area, even post move. And I think a lot of that is because we have a lot of 2-income households that are now 1-income households because of the pandemic. So that's a dynamic that's moving. I don't have my arms around it. We have clients that are asking us about it. We definitely have talent asking us about it. It'll be interesting to see where we land over the next couple of months and years.
Yeah. So would you say there's a tension there in between sort of what the companies are wanting and what the workers are wanting, or are we just not sure yet where we are?
No, I would say there's always a little bit of tension. There's been a little bit of tension between our talent and what our clients are willing to pay for the 21 years that I've been in the industry. I would say that the tension is different now. It's different, and it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
And Zoe, I'm curious if you have thoughts there, just because since Upwork as a platform, I'm sure thinks about this quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, on our platform, one of the things that's fantastic is that the talent sets their own rates. And so that's dictated not just by their skill and their level of expertise and time in their roles, but, definitely by where they are, the business taxes and all those different things that they're responsible for. For our corporate team members, it's definitely something we're monitoring as well. Some big name companies have recently announced that they are doing away with location-based salary ranges. And for those of us who compete with them head to head for talent, that certainly makes it a challenge. We really are focused on gathering high performing talent to bring them in to do the best work of their career. And so our goal is to pay them commensurately for that, whether they live in Tulsa or in San Francisco. That may not be exactly the same, but we are eager to make sure that while all our practices are equitable, we really approach it on a one size fits one level as well.
Okay. And Evelyn, I'm curious, have you thought about this at all as well in your work? Is this a conversation that you're taking a position on at all?
I mean, it's certainly a conversation that I am aware of. And I think that the position that I would take is similar to any other decision that you would make at a company level. You're going to want to be thinking not just about kind of all of the inputs, right? Like where are people living and what are your own business goals and what does your budget look like, but also what is the impact? And because I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner, the impact that I'm always thinking about is pay equity. What is the impact of deciding that you are going to pay people location-based salaries, especially if you are trying to recruit a more diverse workforce? And if you are going to a place that has more folks of color, for example, that also is a lower cost of living place, what are the implications of that when you zoom out and look at who is getting paid what for the different roles? There's never necessarily a single answer to this, but those are some of the questions that you're going to have to get really comfortable with talking about. And so I think that what we're hearing is that for any of these complex things that you're going to be navigating as a leader, one of the skills you're going to have to build is how do we talk about stuff that we might had 10 years ago been told, like, no, you don't talk about those polite conversations, polite topics, at work. And now you kind of have to. So I would just say, be open about the conversation, be willing to embrace that discomfort and accept that there might not be closure in any single conversation, but that's the work.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And And so I think what I hope is a pretty fun question for Dan and Zoe both, which is, I am curious if there's one singular benefit or program that gets a candidate immediately really excited, or like just it's different and they're confused about how awesome it is. For both of you, I'm wondering if there's something that comes to mind. I guess we'll start with Zoe.
That is a great question. I mean, I feel like a little bit of a broken record, but it depends on the person, right? I think for so many of our team members, it really is about the flexibility and being explicit that, like, look, we have some core business hours where we expect you to work. But other than that, like, if you are an awesome morning person and you want to really tilt your hours that way, do that. Communicate effectively with your team. I think the openness and the transparency that we have about talking about what it is we need and how we want to deliver business results while like embracing the wholeness of the person, that's something that I think is pretty powerful for our teams. And that starts in our first recruiter screen and our, LinkedIn outreach and all that. We're pretty open about here's what's great and here's what'll be a challenge for you. And we want you to know that coming in, because this is hard work, but we love it. So come and do it with us.
And Dan.
Yeah, I would. The guidance that I give hiring managers when it comes to hiring true top talent have options.
Mm-hmm.
How flexible are you willing to be? Top talent is going to come to you and say, to Zoe's point, my son has a soccer practice on Wednesdays at 4:00. I don't know why anyone would schedule soccer practice at 4:00, but sometimes they're and they want to have the freedom to be there. Be prepared, understand what your boundaries are from a flexibility standpoint, because this top talent community is going to ask for the flexible environment that they need to be able to work effectively. And they know what their needs are.
Yeah. Can I jump in on that? Just to amplify what Dan said. I think this is an important moment for equity, because people have always had side deals. So let's not pretend there haven't always been a handful of people who were coaching Little League. There were always people who had side deals, but it wasn't widely available because we weren't talking about it. And people who didn't know they could ask for it didn't get it. And so this is a moment for us to say, that's on the table. Little League is on the table. Choir practice is on the table. Whatever the thing is, that's the thing that makes you feel the most you, it's on the table now. And so I think it's really important, if we continue to, live the value of building an inclusive and equitable workforce, that those things are more transparent now. That's a differentiator for companies that are willing to do that, because every single company has done this for some people since the beginning of time.
Right.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. You both are basically saying it's no longer you don't have to be the person in the room who's asking for something special or who gets something special because you're well liked or you have a lot of power, right? It sounds like what you're saying is a company that can offer that to everybody in a way that is easy and accessible. That's the powerful thing there. And the corresponding sort of other side of the coin of this question is there a benefit that is just completely dead and never coming back over the last 2 years? It can be funny, it can be important. I'm really curious, what's something that you were talking about 2 years ago that just totally irrelevant now?
Kombucha on tap.
Was that something people used to actually ask for, or was it just something that companies were advertising?
We have it in our San Francisco office, so if that's the thing, call me. But I remember when some other companies had like more awesome things in their drinks cabinet than and people would like moan about that. And somewhat jokingly, but there was I'm sure a kernel of truth on that. So I think those things that just became this ridiculous like one-upmanship of like, Facebook's got blah, 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 and Google's got such and such, and for those of us who aren't Facebook and Google, how do we compete with that? Those things no longer are, in the conversation set, even as a joke.
So it's really sort of more substantive benefits that people are competing over now than before.
100%.
And I know that we don't, go ahead, Dan.
I'm sorry. I would just say, I agree with everything Zoe said. Just the pre-pandemic discussions and the discussions now are just completely different.
Totally different.
There are no similarities anymore. I've never seen a shift as aggressively as I've seen over the last year. And it's exciting. And I think it's going to open up a lot of questions are we ever going to explore in North America a 4-day work week? I think remote work was going to happen even prior to the pandemic. We were talking to our clients about preparing for remote work 5 years from now, 10 years from now. A Java developer wants to be able to code sitting on the beach in Miami when they want to. The pandemic just was the fast forward button. What's the fast forward button on all of the other benefits? And I think companies need to be really creative if they're going to attract and maintain and retain top talent.
I was going to ask about the 4-day work week as one of our last questions, because I know we've only got about 5 minutes left. Have any of you thought about it at all? Is this something that you would seriously consider in the future, or even not so seriously consider?
I don't think we're looking at a 4-day work week as an ongoing event, but what we have implemented is charge up days where everybody takes the same PTO day. So we essentially like shut the office for a couple of days. And that is game changing, because one of the problems with like unlimited PTO or structured PTO is, yes, I can be off, but if my boss is on or my colleagues are on and they're still working on this critical project, part of me feels like I've got to check in. But if everybody pauses at the same time, there is this communal like lowering of the shoulders and deep breath that happens, and people genuinely come back recharged. So I don't think we'll go to a 4-day work week, but this charge up program has been fantastic for us, and it's something I hope we continue.
And that's in addition to PTO, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to add to that, we want to establish an environment where when people are not working, they're truly not working. And it's hard to do that when you say you can work whatever hours you like, whatever days you like, as long as you get the work done. Because so much coordination and collaboration needs to be done. So again, I think there's blurry lines there, and a lot of companies are looking at it.
One of the things that we're doing at Paradigm is we used to have a wellness benefit to use to, go to the spa or to monthly have your gym membership or whatnot. But as the pandemic started and then has waged on, that benefit hasn't really meant the same thing anymore. And so we actually converted it to a monthly wellness day. So it's kind of similar to those charge up days that Zoe was talking about, but it actually is one that you can decide to take at any time. And so it's varied across people. And so I will say it's taken some coordination to figure out, how does a person like myself take a wellness day on a Tuesday and make sure that I really feel like I can turn off, that my team has what they need to get work done. And so those are ways that I think this theme of flexibility is really coming through, that while we might not need to say, let's always do a 4-day work week, what we can say is people need different stuff. Let's figure out a way to help them get that and make sure that business gets done. And so I'm really proud of that. And I'm really excited about my wellness day next month.
I love that.
It's really nice.
Yeah. It's been great.
I feel like my boss is probably watching this and laughing because I'm getting all these ideas. But I know we don't have a ton of time left. And so I want to end on a question that's for each of you. And what I'm really hoping will be the takeaway for everybody watching this, which is, for each of you, what is like the main thing that you wish in general that people, managers, and company leaders were choosing to invest in for their workers? What is the thing that you think like real serious money, additional money needs to be spent on for these benefits for workers? Is there one thing?
I guess I'll go first, and no, there's not one thing, but one thing that I'm passionate about, especially in the technology space, is, technology is changing very rapidly. And I think we need to get out of the mindset of tuition reimbursement as being the upskill platform. And I think that organizations need to be much more innovative in how they upskill their talent and the platforms that they provide to upskill their talent, outside of just, tuition reimbursement and some of those antiquated benefit platforms that we've seen in the past.
What I would say is that I really want employers to invest in educating their teams about diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, right? What we found in our work at Paradigm is that Over 70% of people want their employers to be investing in creating and supporting an inclusive environment. And what I think is interesting about this individual benefit that you can provide, whether it's through e-learning or live workshops or resources or whatnot, is that what we've actually seen at Paradigm is that that drives organizational change. One of our clients actually just told us that after launching our e-learning platform, Paradigm Reach, really our blended learning platform, that they saw a 75% increase in hiring Latinx employees and a 25% increase in hiring Black employees. Wow. So when you think about the investment that you're making in the individuals, giving them skills and tools to have conversations about what equity and justice and inclusion looks like, it's something you can feel as you are recruiting people, and it's something that you can see the benefits of as well in terms of who begins to represent your workforce. So invest in that education.
I love that. I mean, I would say something that Evelyn talked about earlier today as well, which is empathetic leadership training. I think that pays dividends immediately for your team, but it also makes your organization somewhere where people are proud to be from, right? Many of us know certain companies, hey, if they were at X during this period of time, they learned these core skills. What if your company was one of the leaders in learning empathetic leadership, which is going to be so critical as this workforce continues to evolve and change? That would be transformative, not just for your immediate team and the business results, but for the trajectory of people who go on into other places after they've been with you.
Okay. Yeah, those are all really fascinating. And I feel like we've reached a pretty obvious conclusion here in the theme that workers need to have as many choices as possible, and their company needs to be invested in making sure that they can take advantage of those and feel like whole people when they're doing that. And so I think that's a great place for us to wrap this up. And I really appreciate all three of you making the time to sort of dive so deep into all of this and for all of your valuable insights. And I hope that everybody listening is able to take away some good lessons from the conversation that we've had. So thank you all again so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.